Financial exploitation risk. As we age, we become more and more vulnerable. I think y'all talked last Tuesday about scams, frauds, and financial exploitation. And the baby boomers are now 57 years old and older. And so 70% of the assets in this country are owned by baby boomers and above, and more seniors. And that's exactly when you start to have cognitive difficulties. It's 1 in 10 at 65, and it's 1 in 3 by the time you reach 85. We'll talk a little bit more about that, financial exploitation risk. And then finally, I put on there the risk of feeling irrelevant. As you approach retirement, this may surprise you, but the biggest fear of the older adult is not death, but it's running out of money. And that's why the Elder Financial Safety Center is all about financial security. It's a gateway issue for public safety. It affects where you can live, what you can do, what you can afford to eat. And we're always asked in the Elder Financial Safety Center and financial counseling and financial coaching, am I going to have enough money? Am I going to run out of money? And we always have to say, well, it's a very, very simple equation. We've gone through all of your income. We know exactly what you've got coming in the door. We've nailed down your expenses, and we know the assets that you have that ultimately might have to be liquidated to support or cover a shortfall in your monthly expense. And there's only one part of that equation that's missing. And they always look at me and say, well, what is that? And basically it's date of death. That's the one part of the equation we don't know. It'd be a very simple calculation. If you can tell me exactly when you're going to die, we can figure out if you've got enough money. So basically the answer is, get as much money as you can. The old expression, get all you can all you get, and then sit on the lid. That's a good lesson as you approach retirement. Okay, this sign tells it all. I love this sign, and we all know what the message is here. But the old carpenter's rule that a lot of us are familiar with, measure twice and cut once. You've got to plan ahead to do it right. Ben Franklin said, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Okay, so that's what we're talking about, this sign. No wonder y'all didn't know what I was talking about. But this sign tells it all. And you already heard some of the quotes, and I was going to get ready to quote Yogi Berra. If you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. So you got a plan. And my favorite is Warren Buffett, the consummate investor, if you will, someone sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. When my wife and I moved back from Southern California 11 years ago, I planted an oak tree in our backyard to kind of block out a little bit of the west sun. And you ought to see that honker today after 11 years. It dominates the yard. So you really saw over 11 years planning ahead, and it really grows. So it's a good lesson there. All right, financial planning brings some certainty to an uncertain future. We're all uncertain about what the future holds, what's inflation going to do, what the stock market's going to do. There's a lot of unanswered questions out there, but when you plan, you can get some certainty. And we'll talk about that. What can I count on is going to be more and more important. So here's the basics of financial planning. You start with a solid foundation, and here's the basics. First of all, establish an emergency fund. On average, there's $2,000 of unexpected or emergency expenses every single year. The car needs a new set of tires. The air conditioner compressor goes out. There's always something. I laugh at my sons who own their own houses, and they're always griping and whining about things that are breaking down. And I go, welcome to the joys of home ownership. But there's always something. And so you need to have an emergency fund, and you take your monthly gross income. And if you're single, living by yourself, multiply that times 3. And that's what you ought to have in an emergency fund account, not in your regular account where you can get at it, but in a special account that things are not budgeted for. And if you're married or single with kids, that should be 4 or 5 times. You need to first establish that emergency fund, because I guarantee you're going to have some expenses. You need to eliminate debt. This becomes more and more important as we age and approach retirement or in retirement. baby boomers are really the first generation that has ever reached retirement age and still has mortgages. That's never really happened before. And a lot of it is because we're going to talk about us baby boomers here in a second, and some of our behavior and what we did all this time. And we just, once we got access to that equity that was growing in our houses, we quickly spent it on Suburbans and other things. And so we have not eliminated the debt as we should. But credit cards should always be zero after each month. I mean, that's it. Everybody uses credit cards now, but you need to always pay them off. And so they should be zero after each month. Otherwise, you're living beyond your means. It's fine to have a mortgage, and as long as you can afford it in your budget, but you need to get out of debt as soon as possible. Automobiles are becoming a real luxury now. You shouldn't borrow out over 3 years to fund a car. I think the era of many people being able to afford new cars is over. I saw something, I think yesterday morning, the average price of a new car is now $45,000. And I just had to laugh at that because my first home back in '74 was $25,000. So, and I think probably a brand new car would be more comfortable than the house I bought for 25 back then. But get debt out of the picture. When we have a younger audience, usually when I'm speaking to our employees at the senior source, we have 55 employees in our agency. I encourage them to engage their employee benefits. There's a matching program in our 403B where that is free money that the agency is providing them. If they'll just save some themselves, they'll match up to a certain amount. It's very, very beneficial. So you ought to always try to maximize your employee benefits in your 403B, 401k, because that is free money. Enumerate your spending, then budget. In other words, we're going to talk a little bit about budgeting, and there's no point in trying to budget. We all hate it until you have figured out where your money's been going. We'll see a slide on that in a minute. And then finally, enforce your family priorities. What are you trying to accomplish? You got kids, you may be saving for college, you've got them out of the nest, now you're saving for other things, for retirement, for long-term care. You just got to understand what your family priorities are and do your money likewise. All right, tracking your financial net worth progress. This is just a little exercise. It's a rule of thumb. It doesn't necessarily have to, I don't want y'all to be disappointed if you're not in a certain area. It just gives you kind of a target and a goal. The definition of net worth is all your assets, and that's your house, your car, your investments, your bank accounts, and everything else. And then you subtract the liabilities that are on the books. You might still have a mortgage on your house. That balance, you subtract the credit card debt. Some of you have student loans now, and then other loans, what you owe. And then that comes up with your net worth. Now, that's your financial net worth. It's not your worth as a human being, but it's just a measurement of your value in the financial world. And so there's the equation. You take your age times your realized pre-tax annual household income. So if you've got two incomes, it's the gross amount you're looking for. Just make that multiplication, then divide by 10, and that's a target of what your net worth should be at your current age. Now, again, if you're under, don't be discouraged. Just look for some solutions to that. It may be that you need to be saving a little bit more, you need to be spending less, and doing some financial coaching along those lines. But that's just an interesting calculation. Here's our friend Warren Buffett again, the consummate investor. Do not save what is left after spending, but spend what is left after saving. And I think about, inventory methods, FIFO and LIFO, last in, first out, first in, first out. When it comes to your money that's coming in every month, it's really FILO. The first in is the last money that should go out. That first in should go into savings. That first in should go to what your goals are, and then you learn to live on the rest. That's the basics of financial planning. And this is one of the richest guys in the world that's saving that. whatever your income, always live below your means. And that's very un-American, but it's very un-baby boomer. But that's sometimes what it takes to survive in this type of economy. So let's talk a little bit more about budgeting. Dave Ramsey, I love this quote: "A budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went." And we don't like this word budgeting. A personal budget is an unpopular term. It's filled with, like me, with many past attempts and failures to stay on a budget. But when you think about businesses and corporations, and you may have been exposed to that in your career at one time, they have to budget to protect their cash flow, to protect their balance sheet, their net worth, if you will. So when you flip that over to a personal basis, you're really not much different. You have a personal net worth, and you need to protect that, and you protect that by budgeting and protecting that cash flow. Unlike corporations, you can't fire your kids. You can't fire them until they're 18 and get them out of the house, out of the nest, and on their own. I was my last decade, I was with ING, the Orange Lion company that owned my broker dealer out in Southern California. And about once every couple of years, all of a sudden you'd get this email and said, by the end of the month, you need to reduce your FTEs, full-time employees, by 10%. And basically you just have to lop off employees. Well, you can't do that in a family. Like I said, you've got kids, you got to support them, but you've got to take control of where your money is going. And nobody promised it'd be fun, but it is necessary to succeed. But the mistake that people make, like I said before, is trying to budget before you really analyze your spending, where that money was going. And so that's really the first step to success. So what this next slide shows is how you should analyze your spending. You need to get out your bank statements, and we recommend 3 months, because a 3-month look back really captures the majority of your spend. And if you get out the 2 colors of highlighters, whatever 2 colors you got, and just go line item by line item and try to differentiate what is a need and what is a want. I need to pay my utility bill. I need to make my mortgage payment. Okay, I need a Starbucks. No, you don't really need that. That's something that you want and desire. And so you pick on your bank statement and your credit card statement. That's going to capture the majority in this type of economy, the way we've learned how to spend, where your money is going. And that'll show all your automatic withdrawals and things like that. But it's a necessary step to get where you want to go. And what you're doing is you're reviewing the status quo. This is where I am, but it's not where I want to be. I want to be at a higher net worth. I want to have a better retirement. I want to have more spendable income. You've got to go through this process. So if you do this, I guarantee you're going to be shocked at how much you are spending on in this case, I did it in pink, how many is wants versus how many are actually needs. So there's decisions to be made as you start the budget process, okay? So here's another quote: "The millionaire next door, wealth is more often the result of a lifestyle of hard work, perseverance, planning, and most of all, self-discipline." This is The Millionaire Next Door. These 2 PhDs wrote that. And this is really true. You're going to be shocked at how many people live in your neighborhood, maybe, that are actually millionaires and you don't even know it, because a lot of millionaires don't spend their money. You don't see them with a BMW in the driveway. You don't see them living lavishly. I don't know if Debbie is still on with me here, but Debbie's a financial counselor with us. You're going to get her Thursday if you do the credit and debit session. And she and I visited with a couple of years ago, and it was amazing. Just they were very quiet, they were county employees, and they had, we were shocked, they had over $4 million that they had accumulated over the years. And we had to know how they did it. And we were quickly came to the conclusion it's because they were the most boring couple that you'll ever met. They never spent a dime. Do y'all travel? No, we don't travel. Y'all go out to restaurants? Do you go to the movie? No, we don't do any of that. They didn't do anything. They didn't spend any money on their house. They just lived for 45 years accumulating all this money. And so it was really a shocker, but you never know what's going on in some families. I always like to use this Hebrews 12:11 scripture. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but it's actually painful. But later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. So there is an end game here that you can harvest the benefit of being highly disciplined today, and it'll pay off tomorrow. So enough about budgeting. Here's another symbol that we like to use, and it's the proverbial three-legged stool. And we're focusing on retirement income, because in retirement or approaching retirement, it's all about the money that's going to be coming in the door. And of course, the basics is Social Security that you have coming in. And so you can capture that. If you haven't taken your Social Security yet, you need to enroll online and find out what you're expected either at age 62, the first year you can take it, at your full retirement age, which is now 66 plus, or if you wait till 70, you can get an idea pretty close to what your Social Security payment per month for the rest of your life is going to be. And then you might have pensions left over from old jobs, annuity payments. You may still be working part-time. A lot of seniors, after they go through a process of realizing they're not going to make it, they realize they need to get back to work. And we have a huge employment program at the Senior Source that brings your computer skills up, helps you find jobs, and so forth. You may have rentals, you may have oil royalties that you've inherited, but those all are producing income. And then the third leg of that stool is all the assets that you've accumulated over the years that may eventually have to be liquidated to subsidize your budget shortfall. So your home equity, of course, that would be defined as the market value of your home less any mortgage that you owe on it. And that's where a vast majority of savings in people's lives are. That's the big bulk of it. Their home has improved in value and they've paid off their mortgages. You may have a savings account, you have an investment account, your 401k, 403b, IRA rollovers, and so forth. And so this basically, again, are your assets that can be accessed. Don't put your furniture in there. Don't put your cars in there unless they're classics that are actually worth something, because those are depreciating items. And as y'all probably realize that the millennial generation does not want your furniture. They shop at IKEA and they don't like your heavy stuff, and certainly don't like china cabinets and teacups and things like that. So those really don't have much value. But again, this is almost a net worth statement on its own. The only thing missing here is any other debt that you might own, like student loans and credit cards that you'd have to take out of there. So you've got an income statement, just like a business. You've got a asset net worth statement. So this is just a good tool to use to figure out where you are. And here's kind of what's going on. You're trying to put all this stuff into the retirement savings funnel, if you will, Social Security, investments, cash. I think I got this picture out of a magazine where they thought life insurance was an investment, but maybe they're talking about, gosh, somebody's got to die if you're going to cash in life insurance, unless you're talking about the cash value. But let's throw all that into the funnel because it's got to produce retirement income for you. Maybe what they're talking about in life insurance is maybe an annuity or something like that. But look at the leaks in the bucket or the funnel. You got inflation, and we're feeling it mightily now the last 6 months. Those emergencies that come up that you didn't really plan for, taxes, tax increases. A lot of people are shocked, as we'll talk about, that Social Security is actually taxable in certain instances. And then, of course, stock market volatility that's going up and down. So these are all affecting what your planned retirement income is. Towards the end, it all comes down to health and housing. As you age, what is happening in your life? If you're married, maybe you're losing a spouse during this time, or one of the spouses is sick and the other's not. It affects your lifestyle, and especially when you get down to being single, widowed, widower, divorced. Now it is really critical as to what happens to your health and where you can live. Can you actually age in place? That's what everybody likes to do. Can I afford to age in place? That's why the cheapest way to live is in a fully paid for house, because we found only 10% of the people know it, but even property taxes, if that's a big problem in your budget, once you reach 65, you can actually start deferring those. And we help a lot of people understand that concept. The legislature allowed that a couple of legislatures ago. And because people, seniors were losing their houses because they couldn't afford property taxes as it kept rising because of the housing market value and appraisals. So you can defer those. They don't go away. They just accrue on a journal down at the appraisal district. And there's a 5% charge. It's not even compounded. And so let's say it's $2,000 a year, or your taxes, you can just defer them. That's $100 worth of interest. So it's $2,100, $2,100, $2,100. You can do that for 10 years. And then when you don't need the house anymore for one reason or another, you sell it, and there's the tax man collecting $21,000, but you don't care because you sold the house for $225 or whatever. But it took the pressure off your budget. And so that's what we're looking for. We're looking for edges that we can help people make that monthly nut every month. Otherwise, you're paying for staying. Give you some statistics here. The percentage of people needing long-term care, and so we're talking about assisted living now, the percentage is over 60% of people at some point in their life will need assistance with activities of daily living, bathing, feeding, dressing, bathroom, and so forth. And the average living in an assisted living facility is 2.6 years. The good news is the majority of it is family provided, either by the healthy spouse that's still at home able to take care of a spouse that's having health challenges, or by a loving daughter, son or whatever. So the 60% is not the total population, because a lot of it is handled by family internally. But only 10% of people have long-term care policies. And I think Carl's going to be talking about that during the insurance time. And the best age is 55 to 65 to get a policy, but there's other alternatives there. So we'll look at the average age of people and how long you're expected to live and so forth here. Let's talk just briefly about the silver tsunami. You probably heard about that, the pig and the python. What we're talking about is the baby boomers. They were the huge 1946. All the men came back from World War II and started to have babies 1946 to 1964. And they affected everything. They affected diapers, schools, housing, college. Baby boomers have been consumers extraordinaire. They are excellent buyers of anything they want. And that's what has kept this economy driving for so many years. And so at 65, the average life expectancy is to age 85. So you got about 20 years there. That's the average. So if you really wanted to drill down to the numbers, that means 50% of the people at 65 are going to make it to 85. Unfortunately, 50% are not. Mortality tables don't lie, as I tell my wife all the time. But half of the baby boomers will clear that. And then 10% will reach 95. So that's 30 more years. So we talk about that life expectancy increasing. And so the risk of running out of money, you got to live 20 years, 30 years, you got to prepare for that. The youngest baby boomer is now 57. The oldest is 74, but 10,000 baby boomers are turning 65 every day, and they will through 2034. So is there any doubt that baby boomer retirement is going to greatly affect a lot of things? And so we're going to have to watch their behavior very closely. Frequent question is, you see the average savings, 104,000, average Social Security check 1543. The frequent question is Social Security going to survive? That's what everybody's worried about. And so let's address that a little bit. Social Security is very complicated. 2,700 plus rules there. Most people, it's pretty straightforward. You can get some good answers out there. That's why it's important to go online if you haven't taken Social Security yet and register and start looking at your account, looking at what the projections are and so forth. Just this week or end of last week, cost of living adjustment for next year is going to be 5.9%. To put that in perspective, for the last 6 years, there's been hardly any Social Security increase. It's averaged 1.33% per year for the last 6 years, and now suddenly we're going to get nearly 6% increase. So that's the good news. The bad news is inflation is running right along there with that. So your groceries are going to be more expensive and so forth. There's a big push in Congress to change the calculation, the consumer price index. Right now, this cost of living adjustment for seniors, because that's most of the people that are on Social Security, though it is on Social Security disability people also and so forth. But it's the workers, CPIW. And in that workers, they've got a lot of things in there that the elderly aren't really concerned about. They have a lot of transportation. As we age, what's the old joke? You never get more than 5 miles away from your house driving. And, my wife's car is a good example of that. She's putting on less than 5,000 miles a year. And so we don't really care about transportation costs. That's not where our costs are. Our costs are in medical and so forth. Workers are drinking a lot of Starbucks. No, they don't do Starbucks in that, but it's a different calculation, okay? And so there's a big push in Congress to start looking and see if we can get this CPIE for the Social Security increase to make a big difference. A big shock to a lot of people is that Social Security is taxable. They say, what? I didn't realize that. And if you reach a certain amount of income from other sources like pensions and your investment portfolio, then you reach up and 50% of that Social Security amount you receive can be taxed at your current rate. You can say, well, who did that? And you want to blame somebody. Well, that 50% was put in by Ronald Reagan back in 1984 to save the Social Security system. And then Bill Clinton followed that up in the mid-90s to raise it up to 85% at certain higher levels. So that is in place, and it's kind of a shock to a lot of people that think Social Security is not going to be taxed. Saving Social Security, they're going to have to do something. You hear all these scare stories that it's going to run out in 2034, and it's never really going to run out. It's a transfer tax to the working, but they're going to have to reduce Social Security payments to people unless they do something. And so everybody knows that. And so it's just kicking the can down the road. Who's going to bite the bullet in Congress and get this thing done? But there's several ways they're going to do it. They'll increase the full retirement age from 66, 67, where it is right now, and raise it on up to 70. That will be a great saving of Social Security. Increase payroll taxes. They haven't been increased in decades. And so that's going to make the millennials and other workers still working scream, because they're going to be paying more payroll taxes. And so you'll start seeing that tension between millennials and baby boomers, because the baby boomers want the money in Social Security and the millennials want to hold on to their payrolls. And then adjust the payroll tax limits. A lot of people don't realize that this number on the left has been going up every year for decades. And basically, when you hit that, you quit paying Social Security. So a high paid individual that reaches that level, they get a raise during the year because they're not getting Social Security taxes taken out of their paychecks anymore. And so what they're talking about again in Congress is allowing that to stop. But then once you hit 400,000 as your wages, it starts up again. So you have kind of that gap there, because that'll save the people that really need that extra money. But they'll really go after the people that are making the higher rates. So which of these will be done? Probably all of them, okay, to save Social Security. So something's got to be done. They're not going to let this thing collapse, all right? Investment basics, I'm not going to get too much into that. Some things, not timing the market, but time in the market. You just got to keep steadily putting money in the market, if you look at the long term from the early 1900s to today, it looks like a straight line screaming to the top, but what it disguises is that roller coaster of dips along the way. And you just got to keep putting money in and don't touch it as long as you can. Good investing is boring. unless you're dedicating a tremendous amount of time to picking investments and so forth, and getting educated about it, you're better off paying professionals. You can get your money managed for 1%, 1.25%, and by professionals that are doing that every day. Diversification and low fees. Some of you remember Scott Burns in the Dallas Morning News for many years in his couch potato portfolio, which basically was buying very low fee Vanguard type funds, and once a year get off the couch and adjust them, whether you're 60% equities, 40% bonds, or whatever. Do that one tweak and then get back on the couch and watch TV. So fees make a big difference, and his was big diversification across all markets. Know what you own and know why you own it. As you go through the internet, you're seeing a lot of market watch, and let's say the 3 dividend stocks you need to own, and you got to be aware of those tips on the internet, because a true professional is not showing what he's buying. And these are people that are trying to get you to subscribe to their market letters and so forth. And then finally, insurance is not an investment. And so don't be tricked into that. If you need life insurance, buy as much life insurance as you can. That's not where you invest your money. You're doing that. We'll quickly go through these slides. I warned you that we're going to do a little scams and frauds, because that's what we do. Who can you trust with your investment dollars? Everybody's heard of Bernie Madoff, the late Bernie Madoff, 17.5 billion Ponzi theft. He collected all this money and never invested it for the investors. And so definitely criminal. We had our own here in Dallas, Doc Gallagher. Some of you may know that name from Saturday morning radio. He was on for years. It was one of our first referrals from the Elder Financial Safety Center over to the district attorney's office. And that was a couple of years ago. And so he was found to have stolen $30 million in the same way that Bernie did. He never invested their money in the annuities that he was pushing on Saturday morning radio. That's affinity marketing. He loved to display the fish. His favorite sign off on Saturday mornings was "See you in church tomorrow." And meanwhile, he's now serving 25 years in prison. And in fact, Debbie Burkham, who you'll see Thursday night, the day he was convicted, she stopped one of our clients from handing him $75,000 for an annuity. So check out your brokers. There's plenty of information out there, and make sure that you have vetted them. Here is something that's come up fairly recently. We're going to talk about cognizant a little bit. 1 in 10 at age 65 start to have cognitive difficulties. By the time you're 85, it's 1 in 3. And the biggest scam, the biggest fraud right now in terms of loss of money is romance scams. For the female, it's the 65 to 75-year-old woman who's looking for love for one last time, maybe a widow, divorcee, single, and they're really succumbing to overseas romance scams. And then the male is the 80-plus-year-old that's been married his entire life. He's been the caregiver for his wife as she's gone down, and now he's just lonely as can be. He's being stalked in Costco and Sam's and Walmart, and really falling victim to a lot of things. So we start doing crazy things because I won't get into the frontal lobe where you make financial decisions, but you start, it's not necessarily dementia or Alzheimer's, it's just old age. And you're not connecting the dots properly. And so what this is trusted contacts on your investment accounts and your banking accounts. You can sign a form and say, if I start doing crazy stuff out of character, you have my permission to call this person and just tell them that I'm acting out of character. And they're not going to tell them what you got in the bank or in your brokerage account. They're not going to allow you to do any trades, but it will alert them that something's going on with mom and dad. When they put this together, I immediately did that on my Schwab account, because I want someone to know if I'm shipping money overseas on some romance scam or whatever. So think about doing that on your bank and brokerage accounts, and that would be a good deal. Let's talk about RMD, required minimum distributions. in your IRA rollovers and your tax deferred accounts. It used to be 70 and a half. And with the Tax Act that Trump put in a year or so ago, they raised that to age 72. And so if you haven't quite reached up there yet, you got about a year and a half. And there's competing bills at the House right now to even raise that further. And so that's money that has to come out and get taxed. And so be aware of that. And there is a proposed exemption for low amount saved. So, you know, that average amount of 104,000 we saw earlier, that's what they're talking about. If you have less than $150,000, you won't be subjected to RMD. Be prepared for more means testing because they're really trying to find the money and how they can tax it. And I always like to bring this one up. This is a Texas Unclaimed Property. You may be familiar with this. This is called the process of achievement. And it doesn't spell like that. But what that means is that corporations and companies and utilities are not allowed to hold on to your money if they can't find you. And as we become a mobile society, we move away, they can't find you, they want you to return your money. So they have to turn it over to the state. The state does not want your money, they want you to have it. And so they publish in the newspaper, Dallas Morning News, once a year, all these names. You can go to this website, Texas Unclaimed Property, a division of the Texas Controller, and you can find your name in there. We put every one of our clients at Senior Source through that funnel, and we have a 20% hit rate. It's amazing what you find. Seniors leave a lot of money behind, and it could be some oil royalties. It could be just a deposit. In fact, I've done this for years, and my daughter-in-law called me just the other day and said my wife had a $26 deposit that came from somewhere. So you got to keep going back because they are required to keep turning money into the state. Watch out for the Boomerang Kids. We've child-proofed our home, but they keep getting back in. So this is a big problem. You know, a 32, 36-year-old shouldn't be living in your house. You've got your own problems to solve. And so really work on getting them set and support them. But it's tough when they come home to live. We're having a big problem with the baby boomers, and it's really the latter half of the baby boomers that are now in their mid to late 50s that have had alcohol problems, drug problems. They've had trouble keeping jobs, and they end up back with mom and dad and causing a lot of fraudulent behavior. And so be aware of that. We call them Boomerang Kids. And the best gift you can give your children is to take care of your own expenses. In other words, you get it all taken care of, you save for retirement, you've taken care of maybe long-term care possibilities, and that's what they would really like you to do. They don't really need your house. They don't want to support you. And so that's just kind of another incentive to get done. So with that, I'll give a little commercial for Debbie on Thursday night. She's going to cover debt in detail this Thursday, 10/21, and she's also going to get credit. I don't know where they got this guy. He looks like a shyster. But anyway, your credit score, how important that is, but you're in dealing with debt. And so with that, I've left 10 minutes here for any questions you might have. And we can do this a number of ways. You can hold up your hand, you can wave, just take yourself off of mute. I think you have the ability to do that. And let's see, I saw something in, I've lost my chat. Okay, well, then I guess it's a wrap. Susan, thanks for staying the whole time. You're still sitting outside, I see. I think the moon's coming up over your shoulder there. All right, and thanks for your participation. And like I said, if you'd like a copy of this, just and we'll get it to you. All right. Y'all have a good evening, and thanks for joining us.